Before this video starts, I want to thank you, the viewer, for helping me cross over 100 subs. It's a great milestone for this channel, and I hope you keep watching and subscribing. Thank you. In Persona 4, you are tasked with solving a mystery. There is a series of murders that shakes the foundation of a small, rural Japanese town, and you and your friends are trying to find the killer and bring him to justice. But the big mystery that gets solved is the one about yourself. Before moving forward, I'm going to issue a massive spoiler warning for those that haven't played the game. This video isn't spoiler free, so consider this your warning. Throughout the story of Persona 4, you discover clues to help you solve the murders and catch the killer. That person being someone fairly close to you. The murderer is Adachi, a clumsy rookie police detective. He seems incompetent, gets yelled at by superiors, and makes pretty silly jokes. Except that was all an act. Adachi is fairly intelligent, as he's able to manipulate someone who unwittingly helped him carry out the murders. His goal in the game was to spread chaos and letting the paranormal fog of the TV world spread into the real world. This would cause the world to be engulfed by shadows. He kept this facade of a bumbling idiot up for a long time, throwing you off until you were able to connect the murders to him. Everything that led up to Adachi's reveal was great. I felt happy that I was able to stop the murders and bring him to justice. I would have been pretty happy if it ended there, except that's a false ending. In my first ever playthrough of Persona 4 on the PlayStation 2, I didn't realize that there was a true ending. I thought I had solved the mystery and finished the game, but when my friend told me that there was more to the story and it was unfinished, I need to continue. She told me I haven't found the true culprit. When I heard this, I fired up the PS2, loaded up an older save file, and played until I saw the true ending. The ending itself made me happy and brought a smile to my face. It wasn't a bittersweet ending like Persona 3. This ending was heartwarming and it was a satisfying journey. However, the real mystery wasn't finding Adachi or Izanami, it was about finding yourself, your true self. What does that mean? Well, throughout Persona 4, each member of the investigation team goes through a journey of self-discovery and reflection. They face aspects of themselves that they are afraid or don't want to acknowledge. And with the team being in their mid to late teens, that's where a lot of self-discovery takes place. Think back to when you were in high school or when you were younger. Do you remember when you struggled with something that you were embarrassed about or something you don't want your friends to know about you? Everyone struggled with something personal about themselves. It's natural. It's a part of growing up, regardless of your age. That's what makes Persona 4 characters so relatable. And even though I'm a massive Persona 3 fan, I must admit that the Persona 4 characters were all written a lot better. And if you were to ask me who's my favorite Persona 4 character is, I have a hard time picking. They're all pretty good in their own way, but I would have to say Kanji's my favorite, and I'll go over why a little later. But let's go and uncover the truth behind some of these Persona 4 characters. Also, if I don't go over a character you like, it's not that I'm intentionally snubbing them, it's mostly for the sake of time. If you'd like to see a series of Persona characters being looked at deeply on this channel, please let me know in the comments below so I can gauge interest. Yosuke Hanamura is the first friend you make and the first member of the team to awaken their persona. He has a few things in common with the protagonist. Both moved from a large city to a rural town, having to adjust to a new place and trying to make new friends. And he fears that the people in Inaba hates him because he's the son of the manager of Junes, a large department store chain that is causing local businesses to shut down. And obviously that isn't his fault. And someone he loves tell him this. Saki Konoshi, an upperclassman at Yasogami High School. Unfortunately for Yosuke, this love is pretty one-sided and she dies pretty early on in the game, but she has a lasting impact on Yosuke. It's also fitting that the first boss in the game you face is Shadow Yosuke, a representation of his bad qualities. In his case, it would be Yosuke's true intentions of helping you. The Shadow said Yosuke's true intentions were to find excitement and seeing the discovery of the TV world. He finally had something to do in his dull rural town. He's been bored since he's moved here, and Saki's murder was just an excuse to join you. After you defeat his shadow, Yosuke accepts what his shadow had said. It's true that he didn't join you without selfish intentions. His acknowledgement of this was what helped awaken his persona. Sometimes accepting our own flaws is difficult, but it is the first step towards learning about ourselves. And in his social link, you see him grow and develop and even come to accept that his feelings for Saki was most likely one-sided. And it turned out to be true. Saki did dislike Yosuke because Junes was putting her family's liquor store out of business, and it didn't help that she was working at Junes as well. Her family and some of the local business owners saw her as a traitor of sorts for joining the enemy, but none of that mattered to him. He still cared for her and believed deep down she was still a good person. I'm sure everyone at some point had someone they wanted to be with or had their romantic feelings rejected or turned down. That's a part of life, and sometimes it just wasn't meant to be. And that feeling of rejection sucks. I get it, I've been down that road many times and it hurts. But I think it's important that we pick ourselves back up from it and accept that rejection and keep moving forward. At the end of Yosuke's social link, he reveals to you that he's jealous of you and always had some level of distrust of you. Revealing something like that takes a lot of courage, and I am sure we all have something we dislike or jealous of from people who we are close to. And there isn't anything wrong with that. How we deal with it is what matters most. And in Yosuke's case, it just strengthens his bond with you. Yosuke is a good example of a person who you wouldn't expect to have such vulnerabilities because of his childish but well-meaning manners. But sometimes people hide themselves behind a different identity from their true self, and they forget who they are. And that's something Rie Kugimiya had to do. Rie is an idol, someone who is a celebrity of sorts that's usually marketed for their attractiveness and personality. They are a massive part of Japanese pop culture. Idols are usually presented as entertainers ranging from acting to singing. Idols are heavily managed by their talent agencies and are encouraged to cultivate a parasocial relationship with their fans for financial gain. She quits her job and moves to Inaba to live with her grandmother. Even with the string of murders in Inaba, she still moves there because she was stressed out from her job. Unfortunately, even in a small rural town, news of Rie moving there spreads fast. Her fans are going there to try and get a look at her grandmother's tofu shop. The investigation team takes interest in her because she appeared in the Midnight Channel, which was usually a sign of bad things to come. It is appropriate that Shadow Rie is a representation of her feelings for not being able to find and be her true self. The shadow being a pole dancer with her face being censored is a great representation of this. She is presented in a sexual way by her talent agency and is seen as an object of desire by her fans. Her face being censored is showing her not knowing her own identity, and this design of the shadow is a little on the nose on what it represents, but even that works in its favor. Rie's social link shows how she became an idol. She was an Inaba native and was a shy introvert that was bullied by her classmates for her shyness. One day, she was told that she was the winner of an idol competition that she had entered. She believed that if she became more popular among her peers, she would get more friends, but the friends that she did make were more interested in her as Reset, the personality that was crafted and created for her by her talent agency. They weren't interested in her true self. This is something that I think we, as consumers of media, are guilty of, even if it's not intentional. An example that comes to me is professional wrestler Mercedes Moné, formerly known as Sasha Banks if you watch the WWE. Her real name is Mercedes Varnado, an incredibly talented athlete, actress, and model. She was dealing with mental health issues relating to her wrestling career and persona. In 2019, she wanted to quit because she couldn't remember who she was anymore. People knew her as Sasha Banks, a bossy egomaniac who can back up her words in the ring. They didn't know her as Mercedes Varnado. That's because WWE branded her as Sasha Banks. She was marketed to wrestling fans as Sasha Banks. During those 8 years, she started to lose her true self, and this got to her, and she fell into a state of depression. Even when she was at home, when she wasn't performing, she couldn't recognize herself or even remember how her natural hair looked like. In her own words, she said, "I was looking in the mirror and I was looking into my eyes, and I lost all delight in it. I couldn't even look at myself and couldn't recognize who the hell I was. I wasn't the person I dreamt to be." It was both burnout and fatigue that was causing this mental health problem. She wanted to quit, but was told no. She was given some time off to work on her mental health and reconnect with herself. And when she came back in 2001, she was cheered by fans upon her return. Although a lot has happened with her since and is no longer with the WWE, I hope she's happy in her current run in Japan, and I hope to see her in The Mandalorian again. Besides this, we are hearing more and more about how Twitch streamers and YouTubers are feeling this kind of burnout. Creating content and keeping it with their internet persona starts to wear them down. I think we'll be hearing more of this in the future. At the end of Rie's social link, she learns to accept that Reset isn't just a personality created for her. Instead, she sees it as one of her many traits and qualities that is a part of what makes her Rie Kugimiya. She decided she wants to show the world that she isn't just Reset, but there's other aspects of her, and she decides to go back to being an idol. This is her taking back control of her life and remembering who she is again. As promised earlier, I was going to talk about Kanji because he's my favorite favorite character in Persona 4. But I can't talk about him without talking about Naoto. So those two are kind of a package deal, so let's get into it. Kanji Tatsumi, in my opinion, has the best social link character arc. This is because it's the most relatable for young men and for people who are struggling with understand their own sexuality. He struggles with what being masculine means because he enjoys what some people would call feminine activities. Kanji enjoys, in his own words,
I can't help it. I love stupid, cute shit!
In this case, he's referring to enjoying cooking, sewing, and crocheting, to name a few. Before Kanji's father died, he told him that in order to be a man, he had to be strong. And this is where a lot of confusion comes up. This had a negative impact on him as a boy. He would pick fights with gangs to show his masculinity, and in an effort to stop people from harassing his mom. He hides his feminine interests by overcompensating being masculine. In his mind, he believes that his male friends would see his feminine interests as being gay, while his female friends would see it as being unmanly. Regardless of their gender, no one would accept him because of this. This is obviously ridiculous because he's an incredibly masculine character, and him enjoying these hobbies doesn't make him any less masculine. You can still be manly while enjoying those things. It's all about how you choose to see and perceive yourself. During his social link, Kanji realizes when he forces himself to be a man, it causes trouble for him. And he's right. It gets him involved in unnecessary fights, creates misunderstandings, and gives other people a negative impression of him. And at the end of his social link story arc, he finds his own definition of what it means to be a man. Kanji believes that a man is someone who gives it their all in whatever they're doing. It sounds simplistic, sure, but it doesn't have to be complicated. That is what he defined masculinity as. He also acknowledged that what the investigation team saw in his dungeon was true, that it was an accurate representation of himself that he was hiding. Kanji's dungeon is interesting, to put it mildly, and it can be interpreted in many ways. A fairly common interpretation is that Kanji is gay. This is never confirmed or denied by the writers. Kanji questioned himself after a misinterpretation of his meeting with Naoto. For context, Naoto is a girl, but she was posing as a boy at the time. He believed Naoto was trying to confess his feelings for Kanji, and this confused him. And to be fair to Kanji, when I first played through Persona 4, I thought Naoto might have been a boy. There are female voice actresses that voice male characters, and there are effeminate boys out there. So what does this mean? Is he gay? I personally can't say. I'm a straight male, and my interpretation might be different from yours. I see it as him being confused, or at the very least, bi-curious. Questioning your own sexuality at his age is normal. Being a teenager is about finding yourself. You know enough to understand certain things, but still know very little at the same time. If you have a different interpretation, please let me know in the comments below. I am curious to know what you think. Now with Naoto. She's a genius detective that joins you in investigating the murders. When you first meet her, she presents herself as a male. This is because the police weren't taking her seriously when she was presenting herself as a female while she was working with them. After she took on a more masculine appearance, the police started taking her more seriously. Some even believed that she was a boy. Naoto is similar to Kanji to a certain degree. In this case, with femininity. She's an accomplished detective and comes from a lineage of famous detectives. This puts a certain amount of pressure on her, and I don't think it's controversial to say that law enforcement is a fairly male-dominated field. That is why she did what she did. However, this started to affect her, and she felt like she needed to keep this a secret to maintain whatever respect she had from her male peers. She was insecure about being a girl, even going as far as binding her chest. And from my understanding, this is a very painful process sometimes. When the investigation team explores her dungeon and learns that Naoto is a girl, and her shadow is busy with a body-altering operation, I'm sure I don't need to explain to you what that is referring to. Her dungeon is called Secret Laboratory, and is modeled after Japanese live-action shows and movies like kaijus and sendai shows. These shows are usually aimed towards younger audiences, a reflection of how Naoto is treated like a child. Naoto learns to accept that what she was looking for wasn't to become a man, but to be accepted for who she is, a young woman who is accepted and respected by her peers in her line of work. And finally, in her social link, her passion for investigating mysteries and solving crimes is rekindled thanks to you and her grandfather. I don't know if the writers intentionally wrote Kanji and Naoto's character arcs to complement each other's. Their story arcs were really well written. Kanji, a young man embracing his feminine side and accepting that part of him doesn't make him any less of a man. And Naoto, a female detective who just wants to be accepted for who she is. But another detective in the game might just have been misunderstood. Seems like we have come full circle coming back to Adachi. In Persona 4 Golden, Adachi is one of the few social links you could have. It was a great inclusion because you never really got to understand the character in the original base game. We get to look at what motivates him and why he commits the murders. We get to see how much resentment he has for the situation he is in and his hatred for Inaba. It puts into context his reasoning, but it doesn't make him sympathetic. At least it doesn't for me. And while I'm not a fan of his, I can admit that he is a better written villain in comparison to Itsuki from my beloved Persona 3. Adachi has a lot of similarities with the protagonist, both coming from big cities to live in a small, rural town, and both being Persona users. And as mentioned earlier at the start of this video, he is intelligent, manipulating people to think someone like him wouldn't be the killer. He didn't join the police force with noble intentions. He only joined because it was one of the few occupations in Japan that legally allows him to carry a gun. His sociopathic tendencies formed when he felt like all the hard work he put in as a child was wasted. He gives up time forming friendships and focused on his studies because his grades were the only thing that mattered to his parents. He sacrificed a lot and expected success in return. Sadly, that never happened. Instead, he was awarded with a low-paying law enforcement job in a small town, and he can only afford to eat boiled cabbages. And that sucks. No one should be living in those kinds of conditions. Also, it didn't help that Dojima, his superior, and the protagonist's uncle kinda treated him like crap. In Adachi's social link, you learn more about him and how he feels about his time in Inaba. He hates it there, and doesn't really make an effort to get to know and be friends with the townspeople. He even goes as far as calling an old woman who shares some of her leftovers a bother and hating her food. That's a pretty miserable way of living. So you're just trying to be kind to him and maybe even make him feel welcomed. When you defeat him, that is when his edgy persona of his starts to fade. He realized that maybe if he had been more like the protagonist, things might have been different for him. The protagonist had more of a positive outlook and made friends with the residents of Inaba. He made the best of his time there and had a positive influence on the people's lives, not just his friends and family. In his letter to you, he tells you that the time he spent with you, Dojima and his daughter, had some impact on him. In the epilogue from Golden, you learn that Adachi is a model prisoner and is making steps in his reformation. This is also expanded on in the Persona 4 fighting game, where it seems like he and Dojima are on better terms. I don't know if the story from the fighting games are considered canon, but I think this addition is rather nice for Adachi. I don't think it's ever too late for anyone to make meaningful, positive changes in their life. And it isn't too late to discover who you are, not even for Adachi. Sometimes you need a wake-up call or a drastic change to set you up on the path to self-discovery and change. Having a supportive system and people and positive influences can help as well. I hope you, who are watching, are able to discover something about themselves. Persona 4 is a fantastic game that has a lot to like about, but what it does best is telling these stories about personal growth and accepting ourselves. It's hard to face yourself, but sometimes you just need someone to give you that motivation to overcome these personal challenges. And when you overcome them, you're on a way to becoming a better you and finding your true self. I want to give a very special thanks to Jemakai for the amazing thumbnail for this video. And I also want to thank you, the viewer, for helping me across 100 subs. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry to the Yukiko, Chie, and Teddy fans out there for not including them in this video. It's mostly because of time constraint. My videos that are around 15, a little over 15 minutes long usually do a lot better. But if you'd like to see a extended cut, a golden cut, if you will, of this video, let me know in the comments. I would be more than happy to spend some time and making it. Another video is on the works already, so catch it next month. See you next time in the Outer Room.